Hi, welcome to Colorado in May. I'm Jeff and you're watching Adventures in Natural Aquariums. Let's go. In this episode, we are going to begin talking about the 3 cycles that occur within a natural aquarium. But before we do that, we have to talk about the main constituent of your natural aquarium, and that is water. Water's chemical name is dihydrogen oxide, and it is the molecule that is necessary for everything that's going to occur. The water molecule, H2O, is composed of 1 molecule of oxygen and 2 atoms of hydrogen. The hydrogen and the oxygen sit together almost like a little Mickey Mouse head. There is an electrical charge that exists across this molecule. The oxygen is negative and the hydrogens are positive. That's what creates what we call a polar charge, almost like a magnet. The negative and the positive join together. This gives water a quality that we call cohesiveness. That is why a siphon works, because all the molecules chain together on this polar charge, and when one drops, the others come with it. This polarity also explains why other molecules join on to water molecule and dissolve. We call water the universal solvent because almost everything will eventually dissolve into water, and it's because of this polar molecule. Now we have to look at several different attributes of water when we're thinking of an aquarium. We have to look at the pH, which is how acidic or how basic it is. We have to look at DO, which is the dissolved oxygen inside the water. We want to look at the O.R.P, which is the oxidation reduction potential, and we want to look at T.D.S, which is total dissolved solids. All of these water parameters we're going to discuss could be a show of their own, and some of them will be. All of them are interrelated. Think of pure water as like a blank sheet of paper, and then every chemical reaction that occurs to it is writing upon that paper. We really don't want pure water in our aquariums, and in fact people who use pure water, reverse osmosis or RO water, end up having to put minerals back into it. Life lives on the interactions of the chemistry. So let's start with our first parameter, which is pH. All right, we're going to look at the attribute of water called pH. pH is a measurement of the alkalinity and the acidity of water. Technically, it is the predominance of the hydrogen ion within a water-based solution. pH actually stands for power of hydrogen. So is it acidic? Is it basic? Rainwater that falls from the sky, distilled water, has a pH of 7. It's like our top dead center. And then as chemicals and minerals are dissolved into the water, it will affect the pH balance of the water. So it can be acid, it can be basic. Most of our fish are going to like living within the central range, within like 6.5 to 7.5. There are definite fish that like more acidic water, like discus. There are fish that like harder water, like pretty much all of your marine fish. So there are lots of test kits available on the market for measuring the pH of your water. This is an API test kit. I am just going to fill the vial up to the line. I will add 3 drops of the indicator solution. Measured against the card, that is 7. Our pH is around 7.5. I wanted to know what was in this indicator solution. I figured it was something like methylene blue or phenol phthalate, but it turns out it's just a simple organic dye. You can make your own pH indicator solution just by using red cabbage and extracting the red pigment from it. It's an organic natural pigment, and it is just affected by the pH of the solution. It's very simple. API had almost like no information on it because it is such a common thing and totally non-toxic that they don't even have to list it on a material safety data sheet. Let's talk about DO, dissolved oxygen. Dissolved oxygen is exactly what it sounds like. It's oxygen that's dissolved in the water. Here we see a plant pearling. That is one way that oxygen gets into water. You can see though that the column of bubbles of oxygen are going all the way to the top where they will off gas. So only the amount of oxygen on the side of that bubble that attaches to H2O molecules will become dissolved. The rest of it outgasses and wastes. The most common method of getting oxygen to dissolve into water is just a gentle movement on the surface of the tank, or in rivers, rolling rivers going over rapid areas. That will dissolve oxygen into water rapidly. Now what happens when oxygen dissolves into water is the O2 molecule is basically encased, surrounded by water molecules. The negative of the O2 molecule attracting the positive hydrogens and making a shell completely around it. It allows it to dissolve into the water and becomes biologically available for the animals that live in there. One thing that's really interesting about dissolved oxygen is it is highly related to the temperature of the water. Cold water allows far more oxygen to dissolve into it than warm water. So when we have warm water tanks like this, dissolved oxygen becomes an issue. Dissolved oxygen is generally measured by expensive probes that use membranes and saline solutions and all sorts of stuff. It can be measured with a kit. The thing really to remember is that as long as you've got motion in your tank and your tank isn't overstocked with fish or invertebrates that are breathing that oxygen, you're probably not going to run into an issue with not having enough dissolved oxygen in your tank. Oxidation reduction potential, or O.R.P, or redox potential, has to do with an aqueous solution's ability to give up electrons, to exchange them, to give them or to take them away. This affects the ability of materials to dissolve into your water. It affects the ability for oxygen to pass through the membrane of your fish's gills. It's extremely simple to measure, and it's been kind of ignored by aquarists for a long time. But it is an important element, and we're going to show you how to measure it. So measuring O.R.P is just as simple as measuring the current that's naturally created by the electrons flowing around your polar medium water. You just stick the voltometer in, we get a reading of about positive 40 millivolts. O.R.P within an aquarium should fall between positive 250 millivolts and a negative 250 millivolts. Now we're going to have to do an entire show to find out that there's actually a wide spread, but I'm just trying to give you a real base line in order to quickly be able to measure it and know whether it's healthy or not. Well, living here, I know where my water comes from. It comes from the sky. It percolates through the ground, and then I suck it out of a hole that we call a well. So let's talk about T.D.S, or total dissolved solids. Hard water tends to be basic or alkaline. Soft water tends to be acidic. It has a lot to do with the hydrogen ion and the hydroxide anion. So those are the two things that we showed you on the pH scale. Where do they come from? A lot of times they come just from dissolved solids. A good example of this is calcium carbonate, CaCO3. This is a major constituent of limestone. As water moves through limestone, it dissolves it. This creates great caves. Dissolving the calcium carbonate into the water creates an alkaline condition because of those O3, the CaCO3. You now have 3 oxygens, you have that negative, and remember the scale of pH? The negative side is going to tend to drive you towards the basic. The water here is going through granite. There's nothing really all that soluble in granite. Granite is composed of quartz, feldspar, and mica, none of which are incredibly soluble. The quartz is silicon dioxide, SiO2, and it can be turned into the very thing that we make our aquariums out of, glass. And that does not dissolve in water. Hardness can be tested with a probe. It can be tested with a strip. It can be tested with what's called a titration test, which is actually a fairly convoluted and time-consuming test, but it gives you a very accurate measurement of it. I would suggest that for just a baseline, you go out and buy one of those strips, you stick it in and read it, and it gives you a pretty good idea of how hard or how soft your water is. Well, that about wraps it up. I guess I was completely wrong about being able to get to the first of the 3 cycles, but we'll start them on the next episode. Episode 3 will be the nitrogen cycle. Thanks for watching, and let's look at some blue angelfish as we go out with the credits.